So, good morning and welcome to the Sustainability Action Society hosted by the Capital Club. This morning we have three amazing panelists talking us through climate action to reach net zero by 2050. We've seen momentum in the GCC countries, specifically around commitments to net zero 2050. And this is amazing initiatives to decarbonize and reach our climate commitments by mid-century. And I start off with you, Tanzeed, specifically. We've seen these changes recently, even in Oman, committing to net zero by 2050. How important is it for GCC countries in particular to maintain this momentum to reach net zero, and specifically in the UAE hosting COP28 in 2023?
Thank you, Daxita, and thank you to the Capital Club for hosting this really important event today. I've been in the region now for about 15 years, and the momentum around action on climate change has built substantially in that time, starting with the UAE essentially as taking the leading role, and it's maintaining that. And to a certain extent, that's led to a lot of virtuous kind of competition between the countries. And like you're saying now, it's culminating in ambitious targets to reach net zero, which back then was unthinkable. And actually, it shows that when the leadership in this region gets it and they set kind of a top-down vision and a strategy with targets, it really can inspire change in the countries. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't anything further to do. So it's good to have a long-term target, but it's also really crucial that that starts getting implemented through different sectors and especially amongst the private sector. Now, the COP being held in the UAE in 2023 will just put much more of a laser-pointed focus on the region and its activities. So the more momentum we can show at a grassroots level through businesses taking action, demonstrating wins, sharing experiences with each other, the better, I'd say.
Florence, I actually turn to you now. Being a family business in the UAE, I know you have quite strict ambitions to reach net zero by 2040. What was really the planning behind it, and does it cover all scopes to reach net zero?
Thank you, Daxita. So yes, you're right. I mein, we are a family business. We operate around 9 countries. We have 15,000 people. I think a trigger was that we were a member of the UNGC. I mean, we've been a member since 2014. So we've been, our chairman is part of the global board, and we've been exposed, to this necessity quite earlier on. And we've decided this year to commit to net zero by 2040, which is quite ambitious. And obviously we committing for the 3 scopes, so 1, 2, and 3. I think I would just want to reference Paul Polman in his net zero book, saying that if your objectives are not are not laughing about your objectives, they're not ambitious enough. But we wanted also to leverage this commitment to accelerate internally our structure, our infrastructure as well, to have more aggressive target, and also to make sure that internally people knew about this target and work together to reach this target. So we use this commitment to put a bit more of a pressure, because we are not a regulated company. So we used it to push ourselves to move faster.
That's amazing, actually. David, being a multinational bank as well, HSBC have strong commitments themselves. I know some of your commitments range from net zero on the bank's own operations by 2030, and then you have other actions to reach 2050, supporting your climate and customers' perspective. What was the planning around that? Can you perhaps give us more insight?
Yeah, obviously I was not involved at a global level in this planning, but I do understand why HSBC decided to follow this path. The internal operations, I think, is a little bit more straightforward, because we were already working for internal operations sustainability since 2012. Funny enough, in 2012, HSBC was a net zero bank in our own operations, because we were offsetting. But at the time, it was decided that was not the right call, so we decided to let's really focus on reducing emissions more than just just paying for offsets, and start from scratch. So we started all that process it was called the Reduce program from 2012 to 2020, and the targets were met by far, but we actually met the extended targets that they were put in 2018. So that internal operations party was more or less under control. And I say this for the proper internal operations, but of course we need to break down between what is in our control, scope 1 emissions, and what is not. And the reality is that 80% of our operational emissions, they come from our supply chain. So what we started more than a year ago, is a very strong program at a global level with the CDP to ask our suppliers to provide those emissions that are allocated to our operations. So this is work in progress, but I think the target for 2030 is very possible to achieve. It's a globally led activity, but of course in the region we support, and there is a lot of involvement from the operational sustainability team as well. The other part that you mentioned, the other scope 3 that financial institutions have, which is a bit different than other organizations, is the finance emissions. And that's, to me, that's a much more challenging in reality, because then you need to start talking to clients about how are they planning to reduce their emissions, so you can reduce the emissions of your portfolio as a financial institution. And there are not even globally accepted pathways for decarbonization for all the sectors. So this is happening. All the financial institutions started working more or less at the same time on this. And yeah, there are those. It's a work in progress thing. It's a very challenging conversation to have sometimes. We are having transition plans. We are assessing and asking our clients to submit transition plans so we can evaluate them and just check if we are on that pathway for decarbonization or not. But it is a much more complex tax.
I'm sure. I mean, when you look at it, and I actually open this question to all of you. What are some of the challenges you've faced in kind of setting those net zero targets in terms of monitoring, reporting, verification? But specifically, Tanzeed, I perhaps start with you, is that how do you see the private sector businesses approaching this? Is there a momentum to start aligning to net zero targets, or are we still in its infancy stages from a private sector?
In this region, I'd say it's behind other parts of the world, in particular in Europe and North America. Just to give you a bit of context, I've been working through my company with a number of different businesses in the region, but also in Europe as well. So I've begun to see much more of a differentiation and the maturity of the discussion as well. Now, that doesn't mean it's not possible. Yeah, it's just a learning journey. And you do get some businesses here in the region which are much further ahead than others, who have, for example, set their baselines on their greenhouse gas emissions. They've got to grips with what the different scopes, as Florence was talking about, mean for their business. And that's a lot of capacity building that needs to happen at the very beginning, but also buy-in from the top. So it's fine to say, how do you justify to your CFO, I need to spend X amount of money to do a carbon baseline? So creating that kind of business case is really important, because then you can start setting strategies when you know where you stand, or where you need to be and how you get there, and looking at return on investment figures and just translating the non-financial metrics into financial terms really helps build that business case. So, and there's a lot of opportunities in the region. In a way, the fact that it's quite inefficient in how it uses energy means you can actually make a lot of really good savings early on with good returns on investment and build the capacity in your business to move along in the journey. And obviously then it gets to monitoring and reporting. And so once you have got your numbers and data straight, then you can start reporting on your strategy as well.
And thanks for pointing that out, specifically Florence and David. I think one of the two challenges that we constantly face, doesn't matter from which organization to which, it's always the buy-in that Tanzeed has mentioned. And secondly, it is the monitoring and verification. Maybe if you can talk us through, and let's start off with Florence, how difficult was to get that buy-in, and specifically how robust is that monitoring system that is in place?
So we're just at the beginning of our journey. I would say the buying, again, because we are a family business, the chairman has a vision and he wanted to make it happen. So, it was kind of easier for us. So the buying from the top was not, I would say, difficult to have in our specific case. The one important thing I want to mention is also when you start this journey, you need to have also the buying from all the other stakeholders within the company and not only from the top. So, and it needs to be sustained. So that's also, again, we are at the beginning of the journey, but that's also the challenge I would see for coming forward. And for me, the biggest challenge I see is when we got the result of our three scopes, the scope 3 represent 99% of our emissions. So basically, we have to work extremely closely with our supply chain. We have to open this dialogue with them, see how we can cooperate with them, see how we can work together to reduce this scope. So basically, 99% of our emissions are not directly under our control. So that's for me the main challenge. So we committed to near-term target so far, paving the way to our commitment. And the third challenge I would say is that it's very difficult to commit to targets when the technology is not existing yet. So we don't know how we're going to reach there yet because we don't still have a view on which technology we will be able to leverage to reach the target. So that's again, we're at the beginning of the journey, but that's the challenges I can see.
David, some of the challenges you faced?
I'll start with the commitment, the level of commitment that you asked before. And I think I've been working in HSBC 7 years, and I can, not because they pay my salary, but I can honestly say that it's an organization that sustainability is very important on. It was already important before when I joined in 2015, but it was more of a standalone function, working on specific activities, supporting a lot, kind of an internal advisory that I'm doing. But that changed a lot in 2017. And that was our group CEO who asked our global head of the strategy at the time to revisit what sustainability is doing, to put it even more at the core. And then the group CEO changed, but the new one that came, Noel Quinn, he was the one that actually created the position of Chief Sustainability Officer last year, taking one step even higher on the importance of this. So the commitment is really there at a global level. In terms of how that commitment gets operationalized in the regions, it is a complex organization. Of course, there are always competing priorities, but there is no one day that I don't walk around the office that I don't hear anybody randomly talking about sustainability, sustainable finance. It's really the topic of the moment for the last 2 years in HSBC. Everybody talks about it. Everybody has a focus on it. And there is a big push for internal awareness as well, for kind of capacity building of employees. We just launched a Sustainability Academy, which is a great portal for people to gain knowledge on sustainability. So it is there. Again, it's a very complex organization that things don't go as fast as they should. So there are a lot of internal barriers to overcome. But this is a little bit of our role as well, help kind of have that global vision of everything that's happening and help remove those barriers.
Excellent. I think if we just, have one message to our viewers, what would be, what kind of one statement in terms of message for organizations that are starting their journey to help them and kind of gain that, momentum for them to reach net zero and set those targets?
Don't be afraid to start your journey. There's a lot of opportunities out there.
Yeah, I would say be bold and realistic at the same time. And exactly, don't wait. We need to start now.
I would say that if they don't, or they don't do it fast, they will not be able to survive. It's a matter of survival for organizations right now. Companies that don't have sustainability at the core of what they do in 10, 15 years won't be able to get investments, won't be able to get interest from employees to work for those companies. So it's a matter of, you do it or your company is going to be extinct.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.